Hey guys. Alright, so once again I'm forced to apologize because continuing the trend and pattern of Majima proving me wrong, he not only found a way to actually make the dynamic of the fight between Jin and Caleb interesting, I mean, them both knowing Skymech Ninjutsu already made it interesting enough, but tying Caleb back to Jin's past during his training was a smart way of adding that personal touch while at the same time keeping the dynamics of the fight from being predictable, I guess you could say. Like again, going off what I said, I kind of felt that just kind of wind versus mist. It was kind of a very basic dynamic with a very basic end, but just by adding this little touch, like Mashima's already kind of made it a little more fresh now. Because now with this backstory, it adds this new element of not only wondering how can Jin expect to defeat someone who he's not only trained with and knows every move he'll make, but also someone he's never been able to defeat, and frankly, seems vastly more adept in Skymech Ninjutsu than pretty much he ever was. Because yeah, as the end of the chapter proved, Jin's really going to have to think outside the box a lot more if he even wants any hope of defeating Caleb. Like, and that's even assuming he can bounce back from his current predicament of dissolving into vapor. Which, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but the manga is officially going on break after this chapter. After this chapter got released, and if so, then fuck you, Mashima, for leaving us on that cliffhanger. Like, seriously, Mashima, what the fuck you if again assuming it's correct, you're leaving us on that cliffhanger, are you? Wow, you suck. Like, oh god, I mean, I'll give him credit. He definitely pulled a pretty much Oda and left us with a with an ending that pretty much that made me want more. So I'll give him credit for that. But it's like, yeah, did you have to blue ball us like that? Like, holy hell! Like, I am like right now. Like, I know that Jin is probably gonna make it out of this probably, but at the same time, it's also got me guessing, like, how the fuck is Jin going to be able to get to fight against someone whose single punch can pretty much vaporize, can pretty much pretty much vaporize him and turn him into smoke and mist with a single punch. Like, how can he defend it? Even if you were to get out of this next chapter, how can he possibly defend against something like that? Like, it's kind of boggling me right now. I'm kind of worried for Jin right now. Also, there was a moment where also with this chapter, there was actually a moment where I thought Mashima was dabbling a bit was dabbling a pretty much bit in the pretty much whole in the field of retroactive continuity with Jin's backstory, but by having the single narrative detail showing Jin having met Killam after what happened with Mueller, it kind of really reinforces the reason he wanted to learn Skymech Ninjutsu, which was obvious. Which obviously that whole flashback, it definitely reinforced the reason as to why Jin wanted to get stronger was to protect his sister. But on a more personal level, just pretty much from how you could tell his pretty much fellow disciples were taunting him and teasing him. You can tell that even though Jin had wanted to get stronger in order to protect Clean, you can see that there's a little bit of a selfishness to him at the time too. That even though he did it for her, he also kind of did it for himself as well, as a means to overcome the trauma of what happened, and he was using Skymech Ninjutsu as an outlet in order to try and overcome that pretty much fear of his own weakness, and to kind of promise himself that what happened with Mueller and him getting like cut up and reorganized and remonetized or whatever into what he became. He never wanted to feel that powerless again. Which, on that note, overall, Mashima did a much better job at hooking me into this like two-way fight with Jin and Clean versus Caleb and Lyra, more than he kind of did with Rebecca and Lyra, because the latter don't get me wrong, the French ladder had a lot of great moments, but it was mostly in the back half. Like the Lyra versus Rebecca fight had a little bit of there was a very slow build up to it with a very satisfying like middle and conclusion. But with this fight, it perfectly set up what all four are capable of in the span of a single chapter, while also showcasing the power that Jinn and Clean need to overcome in order to overcome is going to be a very steep hill to climb. And it did. And the best part is it did it without making any of the four of them look weak. Like everyone managed to get their shots in and show what it is they're capable of. And I think I really like this aspect of Eden Zero, honestly, more than anything else, honestly, is that when even though Mashima doesn't do it all great all the time, when he gets it right, he really gets it right. Like he always makes sure in order to show what each combatant is capable of, what each combatant is capable of before getting into the actual meat of the fight itself, and as set up. And I really like the setup of this chapter. And yeah, this entire review in a lot of ways is really just gonna be me talking about the fight scenes, because we also get Shiki and Rebecca doing a tag team assault on some security drones on their way in order to rescue Witch, and which was definitely nostalgic in its own way, because just that whole fight scene of Shiki and Rebecca like just kind of playing off each other's strengths and whatnot, it felt very nostalgic, and it felt very nostalgic, well, in its own way, because it felt like it's honestly felt like I know we've gotten moments like that, but it always feels like there's a very long gap between the time in which we get to see Shiki and Rebecca pretty much work off each other and fight together as a team. Like I think that's one of the interesting things is another interesting things about Eden Zero is that every time there's a fight with Shiki, I always like it more when he's teamed up with Rebecca, honestly. But between that and Rebecca asking the $1 million question of why Shura captured Witch at all, there definitely is an aspect to this that, while I'm not necessarily ruling out the possibility that the reason Shura is doing all this is he still wants to drive Shiki to absolute madness and desperation, Mashima definitely has been doing a lot to show that, whether directly or indirectly, Shura seems to be going out of his way to prevent Shiki from reaching him as well. And that could be just to prevent anyone from getting in the way from activating the O-Link. But I don't know, just the fact that Mashima even drew attention at all to the fact that, pretty much to the fact that Shura specifically captured Witch, I'm honestly more than a little suspicious now. Like, if Mashima hadn't drawn attention to that fact, I wouldn't have suspected anything. But the fact that he did is now filling me with okay, why did he capture Witch to begin with? I don't know I wish I knew exactly what he wanted from Witch, if anything, because the only thing that makes sense right now is that with Witch being the Shield of Edens, I think he probably hopes to either gain control of the Eden Zero or destroy it from the inside out. But that's really all I can think of. I've got no other explanation as to why he specifically took Witch. That really is my only explanation. I don't know any other reason he could have wanted Witch to begin with, other than the obvious thing to torture her and pretty much display her corpse in front of Shiki. But yeah, aside from that, I got no idea as to why he took Witch. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. Enjoy the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter and on Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell and hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dead Knight Ume, signing off. Later, all.